Okay. Okay, this is the October 11th, 2011 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. I think at the beginning we have to take a motion to...
Correct.
I'll make a motion to appoint Alderman Novit, the acting mayor.
I'll second.
A voice vote would be sufficient. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Any write-in candidates?
And thank you.
Don't tempt us.
This is a minor dream of mine come true. At this point, we'll
Mrs. Novit.
we'll keep this moving in a promise of speed. Let's do the roll call first.
Honorable James Cowie, absent. Acting Mayor Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck.
Here.
Alderman Moore, absent. Alderman Pandaleon.
Here.
Alderman Morsch.
Here.
Alderman Schoenheider, absent. Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Edelman.
Here.
6 present, 3 absent. Mr. Acting Mayor, we have a quorum.
And let's say the Pledge of Allegiance to begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first section of our meeting is a report of city officers, and I've been waiting for this moment because as acting mayor, I actually get to address the council with my comments. There were just a few things I wanted to say before we get into the substance, and it's just a reminder to all the people that are driving at this point, using city streets. It's getting darker earlier, and the days are getting shorter, and at least while I've been driving down the streets of the town, it's getting harder to see the students that are out of school on skateboards after school or downtown on Western Avenue, maybe crossing into the grocery stores. So I just want to remind everyone, take a little more time while you're driving. Let's make sure our streets are safe. And again, we're not in a rush. We want to make sure that there's no tragedies. The first thing that I'd like to do is get to a resolution of appreciation, and it would be for Todd Netherton, who's been on the fire department for 23 years, and it would be a resolution of appreciation for service. And I just want to find a copy of the resolution. Thank you. And I'd like to read into the record of the City of Lake Forest that whereas Todd Netherton has been a dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since August 23rd, 1988, and whereas Todd Netherton did honorably retire from the city on September 15th, 2011, and whereas during his career as a firefighter and paramedic, Todd Netherton accomplished the following. First, he was awarded several honorable mentions from Lake Forest residents. He received several citations from the Office of the State Fire Marshal. He served as a Department Hazardous Materials Technician. He created the Lake Forest Auto Extradition Team and served as the Vice Chairman on the Transportation Emergency Response Committee. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that Council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its appreciation and gratitude of Todd Netherton for public service faithfully performed, and be it further resolved that the City Council be and hereby is instructed to deliver a copy of this resolution duly signed by the Mayor to Todd Netherton this 17th day of October 2011. And
It's on there.
oh, okay. Where is it? Todd, it's there. Just give me a second. And I hope it's here.
It's a rookie mistake.
Oh, it is there. Okay, just wanted to make sure. And if I could present this to you without tripping.
Tom, I think Bill needs one more picture, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna Photoshop Jim in.
Cut and paste.
Put Jim's hat on.
Todd would just like to say a few things.
I would just first like to thank the current administration for allowing me to be a firefighter for the city of Lake Forest. It's one of the proudest jobs you could ever have. I'd also like to thank the firemen that are here, the officers, and the Deputy Chief Issel and Garrison, and Battalion Chief Laniano and Siebert. You've been great leaders, and the firefighters in Lake Forest, please keep following them. I'd also like to thank my mother and father who made the trip, and my wife for putting up with me. Thank you.
And Todd, I know exactly what you mean about wife putting up with you. I'm there with you. We do need a motion at this point to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And motion passes. Thank you again for your service to the community. It's appreciated, and best of luck. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda will be the presentation regarding Red Ribbon Week, and that's going to be presented by Karen Cunningham, the lead program director. And Karen?
Good evening. I just want to thank the council and the city of Lake Forest, as well as the local Girl Scout troops and school organizations who will be decorating the town with red ribbons for Red Ribbon Week, which begins October 24th. Red ribbons serve as a reminder to parents to speak up and talk to their children about smart choices when it comes to drugs and other risky behavior. And LEAD is also, I just want to also mention one of our programs coming up. We have Wendy Mogul, who is featured in the Race to Nowhere, will be here on November 2nd. It's open to everyone in the community, and tickets are available through the LEAD website, which is leadweb.org. And we want to really thank the city and the council for their continued support of LEAD and our mission for strong families and healthy youth. And we have also our Red Ribbon Race coming up, and I'll let Vicki speak about that.
Hi, thanks for letting us speak about our Red Ribbon Race. I'm Vicki Duvlis. I'm doing development for LEAD these days. And this is our 4th annual race. For those of you who haven't participated, we invite all community to come out. On Sunday, November 6th, our Red Ribbon Race will be held at Eloa Farm. It is a 5K fun run and 2-mile community walk. You can register online, again, at www.leadweb.org. Also, if you'd like to register the old-fashioned way, we invite all of you to come to Gifted tomorrow. Gifted is a local retail gift store located at 840 South Waukegan Road. The owner of Gifted is also the chairman of our race this year, and she and Girl Scout Troop 2699 are putting on a pre-registration party. Everyone who stops by Gifted tomorrow, starting at 12 noon and registers, will also get a LEAD bracelet and a chance to win one of our fabulous door prizes. The actual Sweet Treat Party begins at 6 p.m. and goes to 8. And we have some, again, wonderful opportunities to register for the race and to also meet and greet, get some pictures, and win some fabulous prizes. So we hope everyone in the community joins us on November 6th for this fundraiser. All proceeds benefit LEAD. Thanks again for letting us come tonight.
And thank you. And just quick question,
Sure.
for the sake, if you can't make the party tomorrow and you want to register in person, can you go to the LEAD offices?
Excellent question. Thank you. And I didn't prompt you on that one either. That's wonderful. Yes, you can. When you go on to our website, you also can download the registration form and then either mail it to us or drop it off in our office. Yes, that is definitely something you can do, and we've already had many people do it. So any other questions, you can call the LEAD office or just go on our website. Any other questions?
And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We can leave this for you too if you'd like.
Okay. That concluding the section of comments by Mayor, we're going to go to comments by City Manager Bob.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Novit and members of the council. This evening, we have a special presentation from School District 115 Board. They're going to talk about the fact that the school's boys golf team just won their second state title. They're going to talk about the heartbreaking loss of the football team and many, many other things. So can I ask Jim Carey to please go up to the podium and brief the council? Sorry, I hope I didn't steal all your thunder.
Quite honestly, you covered the points I wasn't going to talk about. So thank you for doing that. I should mention I'm here with Harry Griffith, and Harry and I will be happy to take any questions you might have when we wrap up. The purpose tonight, and again, thank you for having us come here, is to talk about our ongoing commitment to academic and fiscal excellence. There's a couple of measures of academic performance that we can point to keep this rather brief. One is to look at our trend line in the ACT exam scores, because they're taken by virtually all the juniors every year throughout the state of Illinois. As you can see from this chart, our most recent results were an all-time record for us, an average of 26.8%, well above the previous few years. And again, the trend line is just what you'd like. Makes it a little difficult for next year, but we're enjoying the success as we report on the current results. I should mention that for the state, the average ACT score is somewhere below 21. So 26.8 for the average of all juniors in the all the juniors is terrific. A little bit more narrow gauge is that of the advanced placement exams. Over the years that Harry's been the superintendent of the district, there's been a concerted effort to increase the number of students taking the more rigorous AP exams. For 2011, our students took 950 AP exams during the cycle. The average score of 3 or above was achieved by 93%. Again, very good results. For those of you who are either going through it or have been through it, many colleges will give college credit for a grade of 3 or above. So 93% of our students taking 950 exams. That's pretty successful. The financial headwinds that the district has faced are not dissimilar from those faced by the city. The new construction and fall off in impact fees and additions to the tax base have been a real challenge for us. Lower interest earnings on our cash balances have been a problem. We face delayed payments from the state of Illinois. At any point in time, they're generally about a half year behind, and we're always waiting for the last minute as to whether the money will come through. We did get some payments at the stroke of midnight on June 30th, but even then they still left us at the end of the year short about $500,000. One of the key aspects of our financial headwinds has been the 5-year contract we signed 5 years ago with our teachers. Over the course of that contract, the teachers had an average increase of 5.5%. Now, quite honestly, that was done in a very different economic environment, and we were also trying to rectify some disparities between what we were paying, what our competitor school districts were paying, and how we thought we ought to be rewarding and incenting our teachers. The bottom line was a contract that left us with 5.5% increases on average over each of the 5 years. During that same period, much of our revenue, probably much like the city's, is tied to property taxes, capped by CPI growth, and the growth during that period, by and large, was 2.2%. So we had a real mismatch there in terms of our revenues and expenses. That's left us in a deficit position for the last 3 years and in declining fund balances. About 8 or 10 years ago, the district went through a strategic planning process. One of the goals that was set there is we would have 10% of our annual operating expenses set aside in reserves for the inevitable rainy day. We're currently operating at about half of that level by virtue of the deficits we've run the last few years. In spite of saying that, our cash flow is strong because of the early tax payments that we get throughout the course of the year. So we never have an issue in terms of the ability to make a payroll or anything. There's no need for us to be looking at tax anticipation warrants. But the fact is, at the end of the year, when all is said and done, our reserves are lower than where we want them to be. In 2008, Harry and his team initiated a program called Path to Black, because we knew of the impending challenges we were going to have. A number of areas were focused on for staff reductions. A little tough to see here, but 28% of the administrative positions were eliminated over that period of time. 15% of the support staff positions were eliminated, and 8% of the teaching positions. Now, clearly the priority was in that order. The last thing we wanted to do is be cutting the resources dedicated to the classroom. The 8% reduction is really a combination of some decline in our enrollment, some tweaking of the course offerings and elimination of certain sections, and then some slight increase in the class size. And that enabled us to achieve that 8% reduction. But overall, across all three areas, there's been a 12% decrease in staff since 2008. Probably much like the city, we've looked at every one of our contracts to see if they could be renegotiated, and have done so successfully as regards transportation, cleaning, copiers, and the emergency notification system. We've also been looking, and this goes back several years, for alternative sources of revenue beyond property taxes and fees, et cetera, to fund the school. We've been quite fortunate as regards cell towers and generate $160,000 a year on cell towers. The special ed district of Lake County now resides on the second floor of the academic wing of the West Campus. They pay us $150,000 a year for rent of that space. The first floor of that same wing houses the Little Scouts daycare program. That generates a net contribution to the district after expenses of $130,000. And then last but not least, we have the Citadel Theater over there. So we've really tried to take what was a underutilized asset over there on the west side and try to do as much as we can to generate revenue from it. Again, much like the city, in fact, we piggybacked off your initiative. We did our own voluntary severance initiative. We had about 12 employees who were quite pleased to take the opportunity. The end result is that in year one, we'll save about $250,000 for the district. And that's after incurring some front-end expenses, so it's better for us even in year 2 and 3. But we were able to actually structure it so it's positive year 1. We're looking forward to the closeout of the TIF. I realize that that's perhaps a slightly touchy subject, but it does mean about $600,000 to the district, and we've been planning on that for 2013 and hope that that will come through. The last item is the teachers have been operating without a contract since July 1. We have been in negotiation with the union since last spring. We are still in negotiation. In fact, at the union's request, we are now in mediation. Our goal is to achieve a contract that reflects current economic conditions, which, as we all know, are different than what the conditions were 5 years ago when we negotiated the previous contract. But we feel confident that we'll be able to work something out that's satisfactory to both parties. In the final analysis, our goal is to get back to the days of balanced budgets instead of deficits. The budget that we're currently working on for the current year calls for a modest surplus. And again, a lot of factors at play that could put that in jeopardy, but we're feeling pretty good about the budget we have for the current year. And our next goal, obviously, is to get the reserve balances back up to where they should be. That'll take a couple of years to achieve, but we hope over the next several years to get back to that point where not only do we have annual balanced budgets, but we've also got the reserves back up over 10%. I don't have a slide on this, but I would be remiss if I didn't say we're also well underway in terms of the search for a superintendent to replace Harry when he retires this spring. We have a search firm working on that. There's been a lot of community outreach and conversation over the last almost 12 months, quite honestly. We're hopeful that we will have a first-rate candidate to announce somewhere in the late winter, early spring of next year. But again, that search is going well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or as would Harry.
I have a question. What's the nature of the payments that you get from the state of Illinois that are being delayed?
We get various categorical payments for things like transportation, some other fees like that. Special ed is a big part of it, and you just are never sure whether it will come through to the point that we've had to budget. You know, if we would have typically gotten 4 payments, assume 1, 2, or 3. Whether they ever catch up, who knows?
What percentage of the budget is it?
7%.
Okay, and your cash flow is okay, so you've obviously adapted to it.
Yeah. You know, because we collect a big chunk of our taxes in June each year, so 30 days prior to the beginning of the school year, we've always got the cash, and then we get a little lean in the spring, and then, you know, but by and large, our low point is probably in May, and then we get the taxes for the next year. So always, you know, good from the cash flow standpoint.
Thank you.
And any other comments, or?
On a similar subject, I'm going to leapfrog ahead a little bit, but this is something, you know, that just for the record, for the community out there, the state also is about 90 days past due on $325,000 of income tax payments to the city that are due, and I'm told that that's an improvement over where we were. So, and just speaking anecdotally from my personal knowledge and experience, we have the state as a tenant in a number of our shopping centers. The Secretary of State, my company has the Secretary of State as a tenant, and they're behind on their rent by anywhere from 6 to 9 months at any time. So, I mean, it's just important for people to understand what's really going on in Springfield. And I didn't mean to dovetail, but I'm saving a comment that I was going to make, but it works here. So.
That's a point well taken. It's very difficult to manage when on the 30th of or the last day of the fiscal year, you don't know what's going to come through. But that's where they've left us.
With your reductions in the staff, what has happened to the teacher-student ratio?
Do you have
that? No. These are very close. We were at about a class average of about 19.5 and 19.6, and now we'll be at about 21.0. So it's inched up a little bit, and that's mainly because on the fringes we've taken some small classes and we've just eliminated those. So that's student-driven demand, and then those students have gone into the rest of the classes. The historical average, if you go back over the past 10 years at Lake Forest High School, is about 21. So
there's really no change.
Correct.
Over the long run.
Not over the historical average.
Thank you.
Harry, what's your student population projection at the present time?
Yeah, good question. We peaked at 1,754 3 years ago, and this year we opened the doors at 1,709. We are projecting based on current enrollments in the lower grades. That's the cohort survival methodology. Right. So it's irrespective of any economic changes in the community. In 5 years, we'll be at 1,498.
Wow.
So it's a pretty 250 student drop off. We had a little burst in the middle school. We actually, our 7th grade went from 265 to 298 this fall. So that surprised us. We thought it might be private parochial, but actually it wasn't. It was a combination of just a real mix of things, but the largest influx into the middle school actually was from out of country and from about a dozen countries. So that was interesting.
And any other comments, or? And thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's, strength of the community is the education that's offered, and in these last 3-4 years to maintain and exceed, I don't know how you do it, but it's appreciated. Thank you for both
Harry and
my
his
daughters.
team. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim and Harry. Next item on the agenda is just an update presented to you this evening and also made available to the public today was a copy of the application for residents who are interested in submitting their name for consideration to the new Golf Advisory Committee. I think Susan's going to throw up a schedule. First, let me say thank you to the caucus, because we actually took the volunteer profile sheet the caucus has and modified that slightly to use as the profile sheet for anybody in the community that's interested in being considered for this advisory committee. Two things I would stress, well actually three things. Number one, that applications are due back November 4th, so we can start culling through the applications and coming up with the membership. Number two is that this is open to all residents of Lake Forest, not just people who are members of Deer Path. There clearly will be members of Deer Path that are on this, but there's also a number of residents who play at Deer Path who are not members, and also we must keep in mind that this is an asset of the community, and as such needs to be considered in its entirety for its impact to the overall community. Finally, in terms of, I've been asked, is this a committee that's going to be in business for 1 year or 2 years? And I think that's really going to be up to the committee in the long run as to what are the needs out there for Deer Path. Is this something that after 3 years there's not a strong need to continue the advisory committee, or it may go on indefinitely? And I think that's a decision that will be made in the future based on activity levels and really what's happening in the golf business, and more importantly and specifically what's happening out at Deer Path. So I would ask that anybody who's at home watching, anybody here this evening, please, if you know of anybody who might be interested, they can go on the website. The city's website has a copy of this. They can actually go out to Deer Path Golf Course. They're available here. They'll be available really at any municipal building. And please fill one out and submit their name, and we will try and get through the names as quickly as we possibly can. Be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have, but I think also you'll see in the application that we're really trying to look for various people with skills and backgrounds, and I think certainly, as the Alderman know, we have a lot of very talented people in this community, and we're going to try and tap that talent to work with us to help keep Deer Path in the black as we go forward. Any questions? Okay, if not, the third item that's actually not on your agenda, and I apologize, that as the council knows, we've been working the last couple of years at a staff level developing performance measurement standards that tie back to the core and elective program that the City Council embarked on 3 or 4 years ago. And this evening we're going to have your first presentation, and we're going to once a month bring a different department before you that's going to report on their findings so far, because we've been collecting this now for about a year, and give you an indication of what we're seeing out there. And in some respects, the data that we're collecting is going to then play into the upcoming fiscal year budget and some of the concerns that we have on the horizon of various service level impacts that may or may not result. This evening we're pleased to have Todd Cunningham from CROYA and Marla Schachtel from the Senior Center, who are here to go over what they've found so far and answer any questions the Alderman might have. So Todd, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Mayor and City Council members. It's really an honor to be representing the kids, 7th grade through 12th grade students in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. And the performance measurements that we've been following and that we really think are going to be successful and helpful for us in looking at some of the tracking, the programs that we're doing. We've determined some of those things where it's a work in progress, but the one that I'd like to highlight tonight is the first one on the list, and that is got 2 sections. One is the annual total number of programs and youth meetings that CROYA provides throughout the fiscal year, and the annual total number of students that participate in the programs and the youth meetings. Why we have listed programs and youth meetings is because you may see on the sheet that we do 337 programs and youth meetings. Well, if we were doing a program every day, that wouldn't follow the philosophy of CROYA. The philosophy of CROYA is to have the kids participate in the planning, taking ownership, building leadership responsibilities and such. So the meetings that plan for the programs are included in that, such that we're following the mission to build them up and to build better leaders for the future. That being said, on one of the handouts that I gave you, there are 6 categories for the programs and youth meetings that we hold throughout the year. And those categories are the weekly meetings, the community service projects, the leadership programs, the prevention and at-risk programs, the field trips, and the social programs. So it's a pretty wide variety of programs that we're doing throughout the fiscal year. We left you with a number of examples of each of those 6 categories and how we keep track. But really, to be honest, the kids are the ones that are fueling these ideas and the passion behind the programs. The staff were really just there as a guide to help them do it in a safe and responsible way. The second portion of that first performance measurement is the total number of students. The 5-year benchmark, if you see, is just under 5,000 youth contacts. Now, we only have about half that number of students in the community from 7th grade to high school. But basically what we're saying is, over the course of the fiscal year of 2011, we made over 5,000 youth contacts, whether it be part of our programs, part of the meetings that were held at CROYA, or the programs that we provided in each of the public schools, and at times even some of the private schools. So those numbers are tallied from our staff, bringing back and doing Excel spreadsheet, work, and basically finding that that's a number that we're very proud of, and the kids are aware of it as well. After 42%, 5 months of this fiscal year, we're right on target as far as the numbers go for the attendance. The programs are a little bit less than that, and that's because over the summer we do a lot of fun things, but we don't have as many programs day to day like we do during the school year. But I'm willing to answer any questions about that one, but also the other 3, if anybody has any questions.
I have a question about the annual number of students. So every time there is a student involved in a program, you count them. And if we have 319 programs and divide that into the number of students, that would be the average attendance at a program, something like 12.
Yes, yes. And what happens is you have many different program populations. You have the weekly population of like 50 to 100 kids that'll come on a weekly youth meeting. Then we'll have a dance that'll have 300 or 400 kids. Then we'll have a peer training leadership class at the high school that'll have 10 or 12 kids. And bottom line is, that's an average, but it really doesn't represent the big picture of what we're doing in the different programs. That's why we thought that the annual number of programs and breaking up into the categories would be a better reflection of what we're doing, because the numbers don't always speak the same language.
Okay, and the average total number of middle school after-school drop-in, 24, what exactly is that?
Okay.
An average number of students that show up on a day, any
Yes.
given day?
Yes, and here's the difference. This is a really important point to make. The annual number of students that participate in programs and youth meetings at 5,000 for the fiscal year of 2011. Below that, you see the average daily total of middle school after-school drop-in students at 27. That's in addition to the 5,000. And the reason that is because in 2007, when we opened the CROYA Student Union facility, we had the potential to have after-school drop-in hours for kids that just wanted to hang out. They weren't spending time planning programs, they weren't necessarily part of a service project, but they were there because from 3:30 to 5:30, their parents either A, needed a place for them to be, they were waiting for a dance class at the rec center or a football game, all sorts of things that are going on. So you can multiply every day of the school week by 27 kids on average, and that's how many more kids are showing up than even counted in that 5,000 number. So it's a really helpful point.
Do you have any figures that would not double count a student? So we only count a student once, and you can say out of our student population, here is how many actually have used the program, maybe once, maybe 100 times, but so, rather than say, well, maybe there's just a few students using it a lot, we actually have a better idea about what the population is.
It's a really good point, and we have an estimate that we're really focused on building that all the time. And the middle school populations, I would have to say we're close to 90% because of the fact that we're in the schools and we're doing work with the entire grades. At the high school level, it's probably less, maybe 50%, 60%. That's an estimate, but just based upon all the programming that we're doing from day to day and week to week, inside and outside of the school and outside of the CROYA facility, just because we have maybe 200 or 300 during the week doesn't mean, at CROYA, doesn't mean that we're not participating with another few hundred at the high school during the week. So
And
it'd be a good number to keep track of.
Okay, do you have numbers as to the number of families that may have more than one kid? Total number of families that you serve?
At this point, I can't give you an exact number, no, but it'd be another number to be looking at.
Okay.
Do you have an idea of what percentage of the students are from Lake Bluff?
You know, it's very interesting. We just talked about that this week. Typically, and let's see if Ann's here. She could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at the high school, throughout the population, it's about 70% Lake Forest kids and 30% Lake Bluff. That includes the Knollwood population. And in our population, we claim that it's about 75% or 77% Lake Forest, 23 to 25% Lake Bluff. And that's just from our taking tally of people that are in attendance and keeping track of the numbers.
Any other questions?
Yeah, sure. Oh, and here's some pictures. Nope.
Well, it seems perhaps that I should change the slide before I get started, because these would be, I am talking about younger, middle, and older seniors, but actually, we probably need to go to the next slide. We've got some great young-looking seniors, but not quite that young. Again, good evening, Mr. Acting Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Kiley, staff and guests. I really appreciate having an opportunity to just present a snapshot of the Senior Center with our performance measurements. We have a couple of primary goals within our mission, which is to foster independence, involvement, and personal growth, which are key elements to positive aging. To meet the needs of the changing senior population, with the understanding that most recent statistics are now showing that it's 11,000 people a day turning 65. Pretty shocking number. So we are looking to be creative in terms of trying to meet that need. You can see a number of categories up here, but I'm going to focus first on one of the things that is our primary concern, and then, again, any other numbers that you have questions on, I would be happy to address. The situation that we're facing with our senior advocate, who is a person on our staff who does the social and support services, is that this person is not on city staff, but has been as a employee of family service, spends 40 hours a week at the senior center, but that position had been financed for many years by United Way in its entirety. And 2 years ago, that funding was completely cut. And so very suddenly, we had to come up with the funding to take care of this entire salary. Initially, our foundation was quite strong, very generous in putting their strong efforts behind that. And this year, we have also been looking at grants. Earlier this year, I wrote one grant that brought in $6,000, and that was through a new foundation that we had not been financed from before. I have a grant that I'm waiting to hear from right now from YWCA, which could mean a couple $1,000s more. And we're continuing actually through our foundation actually to look and see what other sources there might be that we haven't investigated in terms of funding. In addition, one of the things that is a very strong support for us is that Shields Township, if finances hold their forecast as they have done in the past, to support us would be in the amount of $25,000 that we hope will come through in March. And that still leaves us with about $25,000 for us to raise. Again, the foundation does 2 major fundraisers during the year, and some of that money can help to support that position. I want to give you just an idea of some of the things that the senior advocate does for the community. One of the things is working with both police and fire for community residents, especially during emergency situations, and in fact, we're in current discussions with them as of even this morning to talk about how we will handle some of the weather emergencies that we have. She does individual and family counseling. She does also, for those who do not have family members in the community, she actually kind of serves as a surrogate family member by doing home visits as well as nursing home visits. She assists with financial difficulties and helps to locate resources for people who are really facing dire circumstances. She also is involved in helping with the decisions and the paperwork that annually come up for everyone over the age of 65 in terms of the prescription D plan that people need to address, and many of the seniors are not able to do it because it is primarily done through the computer. And again, although we have some really advanced folks, a lot of them are not able to do it on their own. She arranges for free transportation through volunteers for a lot of people that need to get to doctor appointments and are not even able to afford the subsidized rides that we can provide. In addition to that, she facilitates several support groups, both for those with low vision, for family caregivers to provide the support that they need, and also for those that are living home alone. And in another program that she initiated this year actually is for daily telephone reassurance to those also who are homebound, alone, and have no one checking on them. So you can see it's really a critical element of what we do, because we can get the people in for recreation and educational and more fun things, and those are more self-supporting, but this position is very critical. And we would like to think that perhaps in a long-term solution, we might be able to bring her on staff full-time and try to have a partnership with the city in that way. So if I had one really strong message that I would like to leave you with tonight, it would be the importance of that senior advocate on our staff. And again, I'd be very happy to answer any questions about either that or any other more program-related items on the list.
We have a large senior population over at Lake Forest Place. I assume that they have their own people that do a lot of the things that Dickinson Hall does.
There is some overlap.
I mean, I understand the social programs are open to everyone, but as far as some of the critical things, is there anything we do for them, I mean, that we do that they would not already have in that particular community?
I would say that a lot of the needs of the community, those residents that are living there have a lot of their needs probably taken care of within the facility, whereas we are looking at serving population, both members and non-members. I mean, our transportation program, for example, which is what really gives people their independence, people that are at Lake Forest Place, they are providing that kind of transportation to the stores and so on. Our transportation program allows people to get to the grocery store, to the malls, to doctor appointments and so on, and we are doing that for the community. So the overlap is just that we're providing a service to anyone that is not living at Lake Forest Place and able to take advantage of that.
Do we have any statistics about how many senior people there are outside of Lake Forest Place, in Lake Forest?
I would not be able to give you a number on that right at the top of my head.
Most of us would be included.
Don't get personal.
No, I mean, it's Lake Forest Place is very specialized.
No, I'm saying outside. In other words, if you take that out of our community census of seniors, how many seniors are there that in our community that don't live in a retirement facility?
Well, by percentage, I would say probably 90%.
90 or 95.
Yeah, I mean, almost right. There's only a very
do we have a number? I mean, as opposed to the total population. I mean, do we have 300 seniors? Are we talking about? That's my question.
I would have to check census, and I don't have that right at my fingertips right now. No.
We can certainly look into it, because I think it may not be exact, because the census tract will probably be a larger geographic area than just Lake Forest Place, but we could probably get pretty close.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else anybody would like to question? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you, Todd. And let me emphasize, and Alderman Palma, thank you for your questions, is that part of the reason bringing forward is so that you can see the data as well as we can, but also challenge us. And so if there's some data points that you think we should be collecting that we're not, please let us know, because a lot of this will be tied into the budget process as we go forward. And that completes my report for this evening.
Thanks, Bob. The next section of the council meeting will be council committee reports, and the first will be finance committee report. George?
Well, two items. One, just as an update, the budget year-to-date is tracking quite well versus our expectations. The actuals are tracking the budget quite consistently, so no real surprises, no real news there, except for the aforementioned arrearage from the state, which it's getting better, but they've gone from 4 months behind to 3 months behind. So just not to belabor that point, but I just don't think that people understand what the state is up to and how they're managing to keep things afloat. But they're doing it on the backs of all kinds of local and private interests, and it's not being reported, in my opinion. The second point is it's to acknowledge the receipt of the fiscal year 2011 Treasurer's Report. This is a state requirement, and essentially everybody received a copy of this report. Pursuant to Illinois state statute, a treasurer's report has to be filed with the city clerk, the county clerk, and published within a Lake Forest newspaper within 6 months after the end of each fiscal year. And so this report will be published in the October 27, 2011 edition of the Lake Forester.
And at this point, if there's any questions, please ask. Otherwise, is there a motion to acknowledge receipt of the 2011 Treasurer's Report?
Second.
And this would be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And thanks, George. Next item on the agenda will be receipt of the 2011, well, I just read that. It would be the Public Works Committee report. We did have a meeting of the Public Works Committee earlier today, and various items were addressed on the agenda. And just to depress everyone in the audience, we did go over the annual snow removal report, and the city's ready and hopefully not too anxious to go ahead with their snow removal for this year. We do have one item, though, that is going to be discussed by Dan Martin, and that would be the award of a bid for the South Park Pavilion and Everett Park classroom roof replacement. Would be included in the financial year 2012 capital and TIF funds, or paid for by those. Dan?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Novit and members of City Council. As mentioned, staff will be requesting tonight the City Council's authorization to award 2 roof replacement bids. One was for the South Park Pavilion, and the second one is for the Everett Park classroom. Both roofs, the South Park roof is a shake roof that is in dire need of some replacement based on the fact that it's deteriorating shakes and splitting cupped and missing shakes altogether. The Everett Park classroom roof is a asphalt roof and is in need because mostly the lack of insulation has caused much deterioration in the roof. So we're recommending that gets replaced with, to include a higher level of insulation be included. Staff received the following bids that are in your packet, and after a review of the lowest qualified bidders, and along with the city's roofing consulting engineer, both Cedar Roofing Company's proposal and L. Marshall Roofing's proposal met all the required project specifications, and the references gave favorable responses. So this evening, staff is recommended action was to award of bid for the South Park Pavilion to Cedar Roofing Company Incorporated in the amount of $30,850. and the bid for the Everett Park classroom to L. Marshall Roofing Incorporated in the amount of $36,000. Additionally, staff is requesting a 5% contingency to address unforeseen problems during the project in the amount of $1,542 and $1,800 respectively. Sufficient savings realized from other TIF fund projects are available to cover the $2,800 cost overage for the Everett Park classroom roof. And I could answer any other questions.
And Mike?
The Everett Park classroom, does the city own the school brick and mortar, or? Okay, so we pay for all the repairs, not the district. Okay.
Yes and no. Also note that because it's in the TIF district, we do have the ability to use those funds for that project.
And Alderman, I should point out that the city technically owns the property, owns the bricks and mortars, but through an understanding, they have maintained the buildings and do general upkeep and those kinds of things. The most recent modifications to Everett School have been made utilizing TIF funds since it is included in the TIF district.
Any other questions? And this was reviewed earlier at our Public Works meeting today, and there was a vote of recommendation by Public Works to accept this. At this point, if there's no further questions, well, this would be a roll call. Well, we have to take a motion first. And is there a motion for approval?
Second.
And this again would be a roll call vote for approval or disapproval.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
6 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
And thank you. Next item on the agenda would be any comments by council members. And are there any comments on any other topics by council members? And there being none, we'll move on to the next item, which would be opportunity for the public to address City Council on non-agenda items. And again, there be no indication of any comment. We're going to move to the consent agenda. First item on the consent agenda would be approval of the minutes for the October 3rd, 2011 regular City Council meeting. And are there any changes, additions, revisions, or comments on those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And this would be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're going to go to the next item, which would be ordinances, and this would be consideration of a recommendation from the Housing Trust Board and Plan Commission in support of amendments to Chapter 28, which would be the inclusionary housing of the City Code. And Tom, I believe you're handling that?
Myself or Kathy, we discussed this at the last City Council meeting. It was only moved to first reading the last time because our city attorney wanted to apply his fine craft to the ordinance, which he has done, and it is now at a point to recommend for final approval to City Council. This changes simply adds moderate housing to the definition and also deals with clarification on the number of units. If there's any questions?
And any questions beyond discussion at our past meetings? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this, I believe, would be a
This would be a
Roll call.
roll call vote, excuse me. I can't
Alderman
remember.
Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
6 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Okay. Next item on the consent agenda would be the approval of a code amendment, Chapter 27 to the Park and Recreation Board by them, and this will be presented by Mary Van Arsdale.
Good
Good evening. Before you in your packet was the amended code for Chapter 27. Basically some housekeeping aspects we were looking at and going through various commissions, and really saw two areas that could potentially be modified. And the first one was for the term of office. We are recommending changing the Park and Recreation Board's term from 5-year term to a 2-year term, with being able to renew an additional 2 2-year terms for a total of 6 years. So that would be the change from 5 years to 2 years. And then the second item on there was for powers and duties. As the way it currently reads is that the Park Board is responsible for helping prepare the budget and approve the budget for programs and services of the Rec Department, and that goes through the normal budget process as our normal practices with all of our budgets for the city, and that comes directly to City Council. So we're recommending the change to those two items tonight. The rest of the items that were under the past chapter was not needing any revisions in our view. So,
I have a question. The second change indicating that the annual operating budget is prepared by the city staff and comes directly to the City Council. I guess I was a little surprised that the Park and Rec Board doesn't appear to have any input to that process. Is that correct? And if so, why?
Well, I guess historically the City Council has never vested that responsibility in the Park and Rec Board, despite the fact that it was in the original ordinance many years ago. Part of that is only because of the schedule in which we're on in terms of the format where the City Council and the city staff set the targets, and then they sort of back into what the programs are going to be based on those target revenues that are established by the city. The other thing that is a little different with Park and Rec is that many of their programs are revenue driven in terms of they either go or don't go based on whether kids sign up or don't sign up for the programs. And so from that standpoint, it's not as much a determination as to are we going to offer sailing or not, but how many classes, and dependent upon whether or not children are signing up. The other issue that really the major driver of their budget certainly is a capital item, which the City Council addresses. Now, having said that, at least in the past, the Park and Rec Board has looked at the capital budget from a 5-year standpoint and say, yeah, these are things that we want to do. But ultimately, that comes to the City Council for your approval and adoption into the overall city capital improvement program.
and Bob, I should mention certain fees and charges do go through the Park Board that are annual fees that do come on to City Council for your fee approvals, which are things like lakefront fees, the golf course fees, some of our fees that are for the whole year, and we'll be doing, Vic has done a recent some wording for us on that to make sure those are covered. So we do bring certain fees and charges through to council as part of that annual process of fees. So we do capital and certain annual fees.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, they do advise staff in a number of areas that indirectly are, reflected in the budget. But really, based on our process, once the City Council sets the fiscal policy, and then once you do some of these other target numbers based on revenue, that really it's more of a consultation, I guess is the best way, as we are finalizing the budget document to get before the City Council for ultimate approval. Not a lot, I guess not a lot of flexibility is the best way of putting it, in terms of available dollars and programs and those kinds of things.
But in terms of long-range kind of planning and prioritization and how resources are going to be utilized, maybe the individual annual budget is something a little different, but it seems to me that, the Park and Rec Board doesn't, if they're not doing that,
Well, I believe if you look at item 1 under that section 2716, it does talk about the development of the programs and operations of the Park and Rec Department. So I think it's covered. The concern that was raised in making the revisions is that the language is pretty specific in the current 3 and 4 that are proposed to be deleted, suggesting that they have a very much hands-on role in the budgetary process. This isn't to cut them out. It's really to more reflect the current practices, which, again, is part of the overall development in terms of consultation on programs, is reflected in these duties, but is not to the same degree and with the level of specificity shown in the ordinance today, or the code today.
Could I just add one thing to that, too? We also do spotlights on each of the board meetings each month. We have a program area that is highlighted, and we provide our enrollment numbers, what are upcoming activities and plans, anything that's changing in that program area, and we kind of, do go through an in-depth analysis, whether that's athletics, or we had Wildlife Discovery Center last month. We've had the, every area we do, like sailing, early childhood. So they all have a focused meeting where we do look at their services and what they're offering and provide numbers and stuff for Park Board to review. So we do that throughout the whole year.
And just quick comment, and it's just to clarify for anyone who might be watching, I appreciate the change in the length of the terms. Lately, we've had a lot of issues that affected the parks. A lot of residents have been very vocal. It's very difficult to find people to volunteer for a 5-year span to serve on a board. And for all those people who have expressed the interest, they want to have input in the community and they want to be heard, a 2-year volunteer span to volunteer to serve on a public board is not as difficult as a 5-year span. I strongly encourage people to volunteer their time. As we know, there's a lot of talented people in the community, and this is an opportunity to have some input. So get involved. Let the caucus know 2 years is probably a good change.
And that's in accordance with the other boards and commissions, right?
Right. The majority of our other boards and commissions have 2 or 3-year terms. So, yes, it would put us more in line with what we do elsewhere. And they can continue on should they want to do more than the 2-year, stint with us if, there's projects and things that it could serve, behoove us to have them continue. So, yeah, so I think it's a good direction. It has been a challenge to fill positions with 5-year terms.
So, I have a question about, excuse me, the Golf Advisory Committee. How is that going to fit into the preparation of a budget for Parks and Rec? Because the golf course is part of Parks and Rec.
The golf course is a separate fund, but yes, we'll be working on the fees and charges. They'll come to, the golf course fees for this next year will come to the Park Board in November, and we will be laying out what would be our fees and charges for our memberships, et cetera, and getting some feedback. The Golf Advisory Committee then will take those fees that we're looking at recommending, and the annual memberships will most likely be in place, but they'll analyze them to help us set the business plan, if you will, for the fiscal year 14, I guess would be the following year. But the daily fees, we can set a fee, but as you know, those can fluctuate, throughout the week, throughout the month, and so we'll have a lot of flexibility in that. But in order to get our membership sales going for next season and to have our marketing, et cetera, go out for next year, to stay on track with that, we really do need to bring those through in November with the marketing going, being put together in December and hitting the streets. We get a lot of our golfing membership either leave the area or, trying to know what their tee times and things like that will be when they come back in March.
But neither the Golf Advisory Committee nor the Parks and Rec Board will get involved in the budget process. What are we going to do as far as what our expenses are, what our salaries are, what our equipment needs are?
Well, we have till February to finish the golf budget, so we'll be rolling in we'll be setting the fees and the targets in November, but we'll be preparing the budget through February, and so the Golf Advisory will have could have an opportunity to see the budget for the golf course as well as the Park Board.
But they can see it, but they aren't involved in the process. It comes from basically Parks and Rec right to the City Council, as far as I can tell.
That is correct. And actually, even though it's a separate enterprise fund, you make the decisions about all city employees. And so what we didn't want to do is start parceling that off and because keep in mind, the Park and Rec Board is simply advisory to the City Council. And so when you set your fiscal policies at the beginning of the year, that sort of dictates the whole development of the budget as it goes forward. Right. Let me also emphasize that the Golf Advisory Committee is an advisory committee to the city manager. We do not want to set up a separate committee that is in competition with the Park and Rec Board. And so they are simply looking at marketing strategies and other things, and they might be making recommendations about many of those budgetary components that you're referring to, but those will then be incorporated by Mary and myself in the formal submittal that comes to the City Council.
Yeah, I think my only point is I'd like them to have their eyes on it, and I'd like you to listen to what they have to say.
Sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we should have time with that, with it being a February timeline, so.
I've actually got a follow on, not exactly your comment here, Bob, but also George's here. You know, I certainly had an expectation that the park board was overseeing the programs and the long-range development of capital plans and et cetera for the parks. I know that's something I've been on city council for 6 years, I've never done. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. What we're saying here is we're eliminating that oversight. And city council is going to take on that job now.
It sounds like we've always had that job.
Sounds like we've had it. We just
Well,
didn't
I'm
know
not
it.
sure. I'm not sure we've always had it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. Legally, you have
Well,
it because
legally we have. Legally, we always have the last say. But, I mean, what is the purpose of the Park and Rec Board?
Well, the Park and Rec Board,
Besides to be a liaison, as it says here, to the residents.
as Mary indicated,
And
that
be advisory.
they are advising on all activities, Wildlife Discovery Center, sailing, all of those. And, you know, when Mary's group was talking about, do we replace the sailing boats and those kinds of things, the Park and Rec Board does get involved in those things. I think, and maybe it's a matter of semantics, while they give advice, you see the capital equipment program, you see the capital improvement program, you are setting fees, or I'm sorry, you are setting what the adjustments are going to be in salary and compensation over the course of the year. You are making all of those decisions that, if you will, trickle down not just to the Park and Rec employees, but to all the employees of the City of Lake Forest. And so we could, you know, carve out, but I think what we wanted to make sure is that they are just advisory to you, and so that they understand that if they make a recommendation, it has to be consistent with everything else that's laid out in the budget. They couldn't recommend that Park and Rec employees get a 5% salary adjustment when, you know, we're giving 1% to all the other employees. So that's where I think we were careful to not cause that kind of confusion, so that they could say, okay, if we want to be in the wildlife discovery business, what are some of the things that we have to look at long term versus getting into the minutia?
Vic, did this come from, how long ago is this? Is this around back when, did it get stolen from somebody who had a separate park district with a...
I don't want to make any kind of connection in that regard, but what we had been doing, as you may recall, over the last, I want to say, 4 to 5 years, looking at what the boards say they're doing in the code and making sure that there's some correspondence with reality. The concern here, and Bob pointed it out that it may be him in stereo right now. Bob pointed out that it is a bit more a matter of semantics, but if you look at the language that is proposed to be stricken, it suggests that they are the ones that oversee the operation as opposed to being advisory regarding the operations. That they're the ones that set the budget as opposed to making preparation or being advisory as to the operations and long-term development. So we wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion as to the extent of their role. It wasn't intended to cut them out of the process, but just to make sure that there wasn't any conflict between what they are in fact doing, what they are authorized to do, and what the language might suggest they do.
And I think, Alderman Morris, you've probably hit the nail on the head. This goes back to 20 years ago, when the rec department was more separate than it is today, when they really came before the city council simply to get the levy approved, and they were separate and independent. The problem was is that then when they had capital needs, and I'm going to say this was probably 15 years ago, that's when there was the sort of restructuring of it, where it more came under the city manager and the city council, and I have a feeling that the language just didn't get cleaned up 15 years ago.
No, that's fine. I don't want to go back to the way it was. I remember that part.
Though, as I look at the modification to the language in the ordinance, I mean, the solution of simply striking all this as opposed to modifying it, softening it, I mean, when you go from looking like they have full and complete authority, which clearly they don't and shouldn't and haven't, to not even having any, there's nothing in here. I mean, it doesn't say anything about their role in setting budgets, or you've just stricken it. So I think there may be a middle path here that would be more clear I could see somebody in the future reading this and saying, well, Park and Rec has, no input to the process. Look, right here, it's not in the ordinance. So I'm wondering if something midway might be, and I don't want to get too far into the details, but I just worry about the signal we're sending to the Park and Rec Board.
Mary, I think you polled your members, though. That'd be the first place I'd look for that comment on that, George. Your members are good with this. They recognize the job they're doing
Correct.
with respect to advising you on all these matters.
Correct.
And they do that.
Well,
I think the challenge is that, we have almost 2,000 programs that run a year with different fees. We have, a variety of services, and there's different things that we have to take into consideration with those preparations of those budgets. So we do bring out really all to them a way to look at them in a focused fashion on a timely basis that's relevant for their season, and then with regards to the fees that really are fees that impact all residents for an entire year. So we've kind of put a structure to that I think they are comfortable with what they're doing, but to say, have them actually approve the budget as a comprehensive document, et cetera, we have not done that because there's many things that come into influence that at the last minute, whether that's from, as Bob mentioned, salaries and things like that. So, but they do play a very vital role all year long in looking at all of our services. They were very involved in the last 2 cost of services studies, as an example, when we made a really in-depth analysis on what our fees and how much we're recovering from our expense ratios and things like that. So they do play a fiduciary role for us, but not maybe necessarily in crafting the final budget document.
Would it be possible to change the language to basically say that they will be advised of the budget and have any comments they made passed on to the city council? And because we don't want them to certify it, but I would be very interested in having them look at it so they're aware of what's going on, and to have their comments passed on to us, because the first question I'm going to ask when you come up with your budget is, did you consult with your board, and what did they say? Now, they don't have to approve it, and it could be a dissenting member, but I just like the benefit, because they're dealing with the programs, that they also understand the financial aspects to it, and if they have any comments, that we're at least made aware of them.
Yeah, I think we can do a couple of things. The city attorney just doodled here and came up with a suggestion that maybe will get us past tonight, and then I'll get into the second part. But if you go to paragraph 1, it would say the board shall serve as an advisory body in regard to all matters concerning the development, finances, and operation of recreation programs, and so then they're not cut out completely. And then I think the second part of that, though, is after the council approves this or not, is that maybe we get a meeting with the chairman of the finance committee, and if anybody else on the council wants to participate, with maybe the chairman of the park and rec board and so forth, to have this conversation, because I hear what the council is saying. I guess I'm just trying to think from a process standpoint how that works. And more importantly, and I'll be very honest, it's an issue that we struggled with, which is sometimes boards forget their advisory to the city council. And so we don't want to give them too much authority, because then they're going to say, well, wait a minute, why did you ask us to do this if then you're just going to do whatever you want anyways? And so I think there's that fine line that we walk, but I think they can serve an important role, but I think we have to be clear as to exactly what it is we want them to do, and more importantly what they don't want them to do. And so there's no misunderstandings or hard feelings as we go down the road. So we have time to do that, and we could set up some meetings with members of the Park and Rec Board and to go that route.
Is there any rush to pass this tonight?
The only rush is going to be by the caucus, that they're out starting to interview people, and they need to know if they're interviewing and asking people for 2-year terms or 5-year terms. So if you want to...
I don't think there's any question about that.
Right.
Why don't I make a motion just to pass that, section 2715, is that it, the establishment term of office?
Well, we have to first make a motion to waive
So
first
you
reading.
want a motion
Okay, I think first to amend.
To amend.
To waive first reading of the ordinance as presented without section 3.
Fine.
That was a motion. Fine was a motion.
Fine. And now I know how Howdy Doody felt.
And I'll second that.
Okay, that would be a voice
Before
vote
we
for
vote,
that.
I just want to make one clarification, and this was discussion I had with you earlier, and this was a question I discussed with Kathy. In Section 2, there's a limitation on terms, and again, just to be very clear on this, a board member could serve 3 terms or 6 years, and then take 3 years off, and then is eligible to come back on a board.
Correct.
Previously, I had been of the understanding, once you serve 6 years, that's it, you're in retirement. That's not the case, and I think that's a misunderstanding that a lot of former board members may have. So I just want to make that clarification to answer a question.
I believe that may be consistent with tradition, but at least this ordinance does allow someone to re-up, if you will, after a 3-year hiatus.
Yeah.
I could go back on the plan commission?
3 years off?
I'm not sure I want to.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're crazy enough, you could.
Keep those options open.
Or you love
Okay,
us
sorry
enough.
for the
So we
time
need a
out.
voice vote on the
Waive
first reading as to the amended ordinance.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Motion passes. Do we have a motion now regarding the grant of final approval on the amended motion?
So moved.
Second.
And I believe this would be a roll call vote?
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Needleman.
Aye.
6 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
And thank you.
And you can come back to us on the other parts.
We will. And just to be clear, I'm going to engage the chairman of the Finance Committee, and if anybody else is really interested in participating in that conversation, we'll have Kathy Reinerson, the Director of Finance, Mary, myself, and representatives of the Park and Rec Board, just get together and review what might be the direction the City Council wants, but I think we just need to clarify what that is and what that's not.
Some reference to establishing policy or priorities and overseeing finances. It's, obviously we don't, I'm just to give you a little bit of a lead.
Right. Okay, no, we can play around with that.
Okay. Next section of the agenda, just so it's pointed out, is new business, and there is no new business. So we'll move quickly through that. The next agenda item is additional items for council discussion, which are there any? And doesn't appear to be any at this point. Last item would be adjournment. Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, meeting adjourned.